Hello and welcome back to the Halcyon radio podcast. My name is Elsie and I will be your guide to the wonderful small town of Halcyon. In the last episode, I met Mrs. Bonnet while Darla was helping her around the house. I finally visited the brewery, but got stuck in the snow and needed help from Charlie to get back to the inn. Let's get started. I woke on Christmas Eve with slow movements. My room was warm from the fire that had burned all night, casting gentle shadows that danced across the ceiling. I sat up in bed, looking at my Secret Santa ticket. I'd gotten Pastor John. His list contained wool socks, loose-leaf herbal tea, sheet music, or local honey. I'd originally thought I would get the socks. They seemed the easiest, but I kept putting it off. Then I asked Mrs. Maisie about it, and she didn't have any more men's socks in stock. I'd have to drive to the city. I asked Leo about loose-leaf tea, but he brushed me off, saying herbal teas don't do anything. So now I was on sheet music. I didn't even know where to look for sheet music, but I was going to try Mr. Hobble's bookshop to see if they had books of music. I got dressed and stepped out the front door of the inn. I needed to be back soon to start Christmas Eve brunch. Snow still covered the streets. You could see loose footprints everywhere you went, each one a small story of someone's mourning. People walking by were bundled in scarves and hats, their breath forming little clouds in the cold air. Mr. Hobble's bookshop had a single string of Christmas lights around its sign, but it was all it needed to feel festive. I walked in and heard the bell above me ring. Then Mr. Hobble shouted out, "Hello, who is it? You know it's Christmas Eve, right?" Then he saw me. "Oh, it's you. Let me guess, you have to get your Secret Santa gift." "Yes, can I please look around for just a minute?" Mr. Hobble scoffed. "I got my Secret Santa their gift weeks ago, the same day I found out who I had. They're gonna love my homemade pickled herring." I nodded, but deep down disagreed. "Sounds great. So, can I look around?" Mr. Hobble shook his head. "Oh, you young people." Then he shuffled away. I went up and down the aisles looking for any kind of music. At this point, I would take a book about music. I swung around a corner, then I found a couple of books that had musical ballads and some modern piano. Then there was one book filled with sheet music of hymns. I grabbed it and leafed through the pages, stopping on a song called "Coming Home." There was some writing in the margins near a part in the music that said, "Slower here, listen for the room." Mr. Hobble came over. "I'll give it to you for $2 if you take it now. I've had that written up thing for so long I'm not sure even where it came from." The pages were a little tattered, but it was the only music I thought he might enjoy. I handed $2 to Mr. Hobble and hurried back to the inn. After Christmas Eve brunch, a spread of cranberry orange scones, maple glazed ham, and cinnamon spiced hot chocolate, we cleaned up together. I went upstairs to wrap my Secret Santa gift in brown paper and twine, then joined Janice in the lounge to walk together to the community center. We walked along the streets with other townsfolk dressed in their fancy Christmas clothes. Everyone looked so nice. Janice wore an especially beautiful emerald green dress that made her eyes sparkle. We made our way into the center. The Christmas tree was so large its star touched the ceiling. It was covered in ornaments from everyone in town, old and new, hanging on the branches like memories. The bottom of the tree was littered with Secret Santa gifts wrapped in every color and pattern imaginable. I set mine down, and Janice and I went around the room saying hi and mingling. We ate the potluck dinner, dishes I'd never seen before, family recipes passed down through generations, and drank mulled wine that warmed us from the inside out. Then Mayor Griffith announced it was time to swap gifts. Everyone crowded around, handing out presents with excitement and laughter. A young boy Darla knew from school came up to me. His name was Smith, and I was his Secret Santa. He watched as I unwrapped a raccoon hat. He'd caught the raccoon himself, and his grandpa had made it into a hat for him. I smiled wide, just happy a young boy was so joyful to give it away. I saw my gift to Pastor John still under the tree, so I made my way through the crowd to get it so I could hand it to him myself. Pastor John stopped by on Sundays at the inn and held a small prayer for anyone staying there who wanted one. It was a nice gesture, and he was always pleasant to talk to. I looked around the room to find his friendly face, but couldn't find him. I walked around more and finally saw him near the food, speaking with a woman in tears as he comforted her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and you could see the light returning to the woman's face. I waited until the teary woman was smiling and walking away. Pastor John made eye contact with me, and we exchanged grins. "Turns out you're my secret Santa," I said to him. "Well, what a wonderful surprise, Elsie," he said back, cheery. "I like the hat. Who gave you such a great gift?" I laughed. "Oh, this is from Smith. I guess he caught the raccoon himself." Pastor John laughed. "That sounds about right. Well, let's see what this is." He began to unwrap the paper from the sheet music book. His face fell. His smile was now replaced by a furrow between his brows. Then he began frantically flipping through the pages and stopped on the Coming Home song I'd seen before. Pastor John covered his mouth. He whispered, "Where did you find this?" I said, "Mr. Hobble's bookstore." He looked up at me. "I've looked there 1,000,000 times, daily, for so long, He trailed off. Then I could see his eyes getting red. He whispered, "Slower here, listen for the room." He traced the words with his fingers. Feeling awkward, I asked, "Is this a familiar song? I'd never heard of it." He nodded his head, still in a whisper. "Yes, Elsie, very familiar. So very familiar." I played this music with my mother when I was a boy. This was her book. This was her handwriting. She always said to me at this part, at the chorus, "Slower here to listen for the tone of the room." He pointed to the writing in the margin with a shaky hand. When we were packing up her estate after she passed, I asked them to keep all her music, but this one here, it was misplaced. I looked for it everywhere. I asked everyone. I ripped open so many boxes, Elsie. I could see the delight in his eyes now, mixed with tears. I couldn't bear to play this song without her words in my head. Sometimes you have to listen to the room. What a blessing, Elsie. Truly, God works in mysterious ways. I had a soft smile on my face as he told me of his mother. He remembered her so fondly. As Pastor John and I said our goodbyes and Merry Christmases to each other, I saw him walk away with a huge grin as he looked down at the music book, holding it close to his chest like something precious he thought he'd lost forever. The feeling of finally doing something right, like maybe this is where I belonged, flooded through me. But I knew I had one more person to find to bring some degree of Christmas comfort to. I was nervous, but looked around the room for Mrs. Bonnet. I waded through the mingling crowds, but couldn't find her. Darla mentioned she stayed home this evening. That's when I knew I had to go to her. Then grabbed Basil, and we trotted through the snow to Mrs. Bonnet's house. When we knocked, Mrs. Bonnet answered in her pajamas. The soft glow of a television spilled out behind her. She looked tired and not particularly pleased to see us. "You can't drag me out to that party tonight," she said. "Not with Ivan gone this year, not with the kids unable to visit." Her voice cracked as she started to close the door. "You don't need to come anywhere," I said gently. "We just want to bring you something." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. Her eyes landed on Basil. "That thing can stay over there," she said, pointing to the corner of the room. "That works for me," Basil said kindly, and shuffled where he was told. Mrs. Bonnet folded her arms. "Well, what is it?" I glanced at Basil and nodded. "I spent some time going through Ivan Bonnet's digital records," Basil began, careful and slow. old emails, saved notes, comment drafts, messages he never sent, things he wrote for himself mostly. I tried to focus only on what he said about you. Mrs. Bonnet looked down at the floor. I didn't know he kept things like that. Many people do, Basil said. They just don't always mean for anyone to read them. She swallowed. All right, go on. Basil paused, as if choosing his words. I didn't only look for things Ivan wrote about you, he said. I looked for moments, little markers, the way someone keeps track of a life without meaning to. Mrs. Bonnet sat very still. These are all from different years, Basil continued. They aren't organized, but together they tell kind of a story. He paused. Today we fixed the fence. Margaret handed me nails and told me I was doing it wrong. She was right. We laughed about it for longer than necessary. Mrs. Bonnet let out a quiet, surprised laugh through her nose. The kids came by for supper, loud, messy, perfect. Margaret made too much food again. We'll be eating leftovers for days. Basil kept talking. Woke up early, snow on the ground. Margaret still asleep. I watched her breathe for a while. Felt lucky. Still do. Miss Bonnet pressed a hand to her mouth. Another year gone. I don't feel cheated by time. I feel like I used it. The fire popped softly in the hearth. If this is the age where things slow down, I don't mind. I like the quiet. I like the way Margaret hums when she thinks no one is listening. Basil's voice softened. I've had a good life. Not perfect, but good. The kind you can put down gently when it's time. The room felt full in a way that had nothing to do with space. After a long moment, Basil said, that was near the end. Mrs. Bonnet nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks unchecked. He never said goodbye, she whispered. Basil tilted his head. Sometimes people don't. She breathed out slowly, as if something tight had loosened. Well, she said, her voice wavering but steady. That sounds like him. Always noticing, always writing things down like he didn't want to forget. She wiped her face. I suppose that's a nice way to be remembered. She stood, turning the television off. I'm worn out now, dear, but thank you for bringing this by. She paused at the hallway. Merry Christmas to both of you. We said Merry Christmas back and went on our way back to the inn, thinking about if it was too soon for Mrs. Bonnet to be presented with something so personal. We passed by the community center to see a few people lingering, but it was mostly cleared out. The snow continued to fall softly, covering our footprints as we walked. I woke the next morning on Christmas Day. When I went downstairs, Janice was sitting in the lounge by the fire, a small smile on her face. We exchanged Merry Christmases as I started in on the cinnamon rolls and quiches for the overnight guests. Basil and I worked quietly that morning, the kitchen filled with warmth and the scent of butter and cinnamon. We cleaned up and I headed out to the cafe. I wanted some of Leo's coffee on Christmas. To my surprise, it was packed. I saw Mr. Hobble sitting with a group of men discussing literature with animated gestures. Leo was buzzing around taking coffee orders. Janice and Mrs. Maisie sat in a corner booth with a few other ladies all dressed up in their Sunday best, snickering about something secret. Mrs. Mayweather was sitting with Mayor Griffith and Pastor John, all having a serious conversation. Darla came in with her parents and were seated in a booth. They were all smiling. Darla was holding a new sketchbook, her fingers already smudged with pencil. Charlie was with his group of farming friends along with Ashley, the girl he always seemed to be with. It was comforting seeing everyone all together in the cafe. I sat at the bar as Leo came up to me, Well, what are we having? Some eggnog, something or other? I looked at him and laughed. Yeah, something like that, Leo. He zoomed to the back and started frothing something. As I turned around, I saw Mrs. Bonnet walking up to the cafe. She opened the door and came in. All eyes were on her as she sat next to me. Leo set a coffee in front of me and turned to Mrs. Bonnet. How about you? Everyone in the cafe seemed to lean in to hear what she was going to say. I'd like a cup of coffee, thank you. The whole room seemed to exhale. Simple enough, Leo said, as he went to fetch it for her. Everyone's eyes went back to what they were doing before she stepped in. I smiled at her. She said, I wouldn't mind seeing Basil again sometime. I nodded my head. Of course. I looked around the room at all the familiar faces, everyone cheery from the holiday. Leo came back to bring Mrs. Bonnet her coffee. She drank it and said, Now that's a good cup of coffee. She smiled. I smiled back. The room was noisy and cozy, holding all the people I'd met over the few months I'd lived here. The morning light came through the windows, catching the steam from everyone's coffee cups, making the whole room glow golden. The cafe was full that morning, louder and warmer than I expected. I stayed, long enough for the light to change, long enough to forget where I'd been before. Thank you for listening to the Halcyon Radio podcast. I truly appreciate you being here for all of Season 1. Please join me for Season 2 coming soon.